But then when you go to the board level, it's quite interesting. The government IT profession, the UK government IT profession, lays down a structure for roles in government. And everyone that is an IT professional in the UK government is meant to comply with this structure. It's quite interesting that the lower levels, there's actually a lot of detail. When you get to level 7, or level 7, the CIO, the head of profession, the detail suddenly runs out. And yet there's the largest CIO in the country is in this role, Phil Pavitt, that I talked about earlier. But there isn't a description of what he does. So if you dig deeper into it, it says actually a CIO looks after corporate governance of IT, enterprise architecture, organisational design and implementation, and stakeholder and relationship management. That's it. That's the job of a CIO. Is that the job of a CIO? Because that's what the government in London says the job of a CIO is. I don't think it captures many aspects of what's important for a CIO. So if you then go to the Sophia level 7 descriptor, I'm going to make this slightly easier in a minute. When you're at level 7, what's important is autonomy, influence, complexity, and business skills. Those are the levels in the Sophia structure. Chartered status is at level 5. There is a description of what somebody at level 5 should be. It is a competent IT professional. When you're at level 7, there is equally a definition of what a level 7, a CIO, should be in the Sophia framework. And it's pretty comprehensive in its coverage. But anyone that's a Sophia consultant gets used to picking out the verbs. And start picking out the verbs in this, and you start getting to the essence of what a CIO might be. So it's very much around making decisions, influencing development in IT, advancing knowledge and exploitation of IT. For me, this is starting to sound a bit more realistic. This is sounding a bit more like a description of what a CIO could and should possibly be. So if you summarise that and you pull out those verbs and the description of what a CIO actually does, a CIO needs to be a decision maker and an influencer. They can develop long-term strategic relationships, formulate and implement strategy, have high-level leadership and management skills. Oh, now we get to the first technical one. And the first technical one is can present complex technical ideas to technical and non-technical audiences and communicate the impact of emerging technologies. Well, what I was saying earlier is about one of the roles of a CIO is actually looking at technologies and assessing their impact. So actually that is in the Sophia description and can assess the impact of legislation and promote compliance. So as the industry, we've actually probably captured it quite well in the level descriptor for a Sophia level 7 person. But we're not actually seeing it come out in practice. The other place I go is then the detail of Sophia. And one of the things I've been doing recently is looking at each level and seeing if you just pull out the skills at each level, what does it tell you about somebody in that level? And level 7 is quite thin on the number of skills that are in that level. And when you group them together, what you actually find is a lot around IT governance, information management, business strategy. Slightly fewer from program, project and solution management or stakeholder management. A few from systems design and development, but only a couple. And the remainder from managing relationships. So actually, the industry as a whole has actually defined a CIO in terms of somebody that is really someone that's interested in information governance, information management, and business strategy. Is that the view of that? Is that a CIO? Is that the role of an IT leader in the IT profession? But the technical elements are still there. We've still got project management, we've still got service management. There still needs to be that awareness of those aspects. But quite a lot of these are actually non-IT specific. It's a very generic, generalist, senior leader in a business with a technology focus. So we're looking at a very broad leadership management role with that technical understanding. The other group that I've been working with is the CIO Executive Council, and they've gone to CIOs around the world and said, what do you see? And actually they've come back with 3 different types of CIO. And this is the structure that I'm now talking to Cabinet Office about, how they might develop CIOs for government. And there's a functional CIO, which is very much about running an IT organisation, looking at operational effectiveness and providing reliable services. There's a transformational CIO, which is creating a partnership with the business and actually becoming a business enabler and an enabling process change to happen. And then there's a strategic business CIO who is deeply involved in business strategy and is actually using IT to drive the business and to enable the business to act very differently. And quite often people actually migrate through these. And when they interviewed all the CIOs, what actually happened was they said what they came out with was 43% of the CIOs globally are actually technical CIOs. They're actually IT directors, they're IT function heads, the technologists in a leadership role. 46% are in this transformational role, and only about 11% actually contribute to core business strategy. So that says that actually the image of an IT leader being somebody that really influences business strategy and business direction isn't borne out with practice, which says the majority of people are actually high-level IT managers. So what's that telling us about where the industry is? And the CIO Exec Council has taken this view where actually the functional head starts as somebody that's very internally focused, very systems focused, very service orientated. They then move up to having more of a view of the enterprise as a whole, get more process orientated, and are much more interested in partner relationships. And then eventually they become somebody that's more focused on the external environment. They're looking at the business as a whole and their peer relationships. What I find very interesting is what they've put alongside this, which is a set of behavioural competencies. And the behavioural competencies are, you start with functional expertise, but actually the skills that need to develop are team leadership, people and organisational development. Well, that's actually come from the government CIO description. Results orientation, collaboration, change leadership, and gaining a strategic orientation. And then if you're going to be a real business strategist, you then start looking at the external view. And you look at the external customer's view, you look at the market, and you look at commercial orientation. And quite often what I see in university programs, and certainly what we're changing in our program, is you start being very good at the functional role. You can get to the middle level, the transformational, but actually what's really important if you want to help drive the business is to have a commercial view and some market knowledge. And if you're actually going to advise on the impact and the use of technology, that's where you need to get to. But actually, there's no curriculum around that actually delivers that. It's a complete gap in the educational delivery. But it's about knowing the market. It's about knowing the IT market. It's about knowing the industry. But that's the gap in what we're actually teaching people in how we develop skills for future IT leaders. And what they've done is they've mapped it through to all the deliverables that you can get out of this. And you get the deliverables that are wanted. You get security, you get your process improvement, you can engage with globalization, all of the things that were on the earlier diagrams about the horizons can come through developing these behavioural competencies. So an exercise I went through with the Executive Council, with the Sphere Foundation, is we put the two together and actually they overlay on each other. What we've got is a set of descriptions about what a CIO can do and a set of descriptions about CIO behaviours. And actually that's quite good practice in Sphere, because in the Sphere model you should have professional competencies and you should have behavioural competencies. So actually we've got those from the two different sources. And you end up with a description like this. So professionally, a CIO is looking at corporate governance, information strategy. I do have a question mark over enterprise architect. Would a CIO really be an enterprise architect? Because that's come from the government description. They are very much interested in and capable to do organisational design. They are good at stakeholder relationship management, projects, systems, service. On the behavioural side, yep, they need to have team leadership, people and organisation development, results, collaboration, change, a strategic orientation and external customer focus, market knowledge and commercial orientation. And underpinning all of that, the core knowledge that they should come into this role with is around understanding enterprise strategy, architecture, information governance, and a knowledge of core topics from the breadth of knowledge around service, program, project management. So an IT leader, a CIO, should know what ITIL is about. They won't necessarily be an ITIL expert, but they should know what it's about. They should know about security, and they should also be a very good general manager and leader. So that's the picture that I've drawn from all these different sources. And where we're now trying to take that is, this is the one plug for the OU that I said I wasn't going to put in, but actually we're developing, taking these ideas and saying, actually, can we take somebody from being an IT staff member through developing the behavioural competencies and specific skills? Can we develop somebody who could potentially be a future CEO? Because that was the vision that was laid down several years ago by David Clark at BCS. And see, as they move through roles, as they go up through IT manager, through senior leader, into the CIO roles, the perspective changes, the competencies they've got to develop, the behaviours change as they go through each stage. Alongside that, you then put the specific professional competencies, and you should end up with the ability to develop somebody right the way through to being a business strategist, CIO, or even a CEO. And actually, what we need to do is start building a chain where we push people in at the front end of this system with the right core knowledge. And actually we generate some pull through where actually government, industry, everyone's asking for people with the right type of roles.